you'll be incentivized to go find more block variations. And oh man, how am I going to get all these blocks back to my base? Can't do it with a chest? Oh, let's kill the Ender Dragon so we can get some shulker boxes and my Elytra. I would really like to make an underwater base, but how would I do that? I should go get some sponges and prismarine blocks to make it thematically match. This is exciting loot and exploration for people who are seeking out exactly what these places have to offer. Their resources, finding a coral reef or an ocean monument or a mushroom biome are very exciting things because they aren't super common and they often have very niche building materials. But for someone who doesn't build, I can see why you think that's problematic. Jet even mentions later that if you spread out the resources for each biome, you'll be willing to build several bases throughout the world, making it easier to harvest the resources from those biomes. Now, I'm definitely not speaking for everybody, but for me personally, that's exactly what I do. So this point kind of doesn't really make sense. You need prismarine blocks, you go to the ocean monument. Want dark oak wood, you have to go find it. You need lots of sand to make glass, you have to find a desert. For the parks and beaches. But on to his next point, transportation, which I can definitely understand some of the points that he gets into here, but to a lesser degree. He states that when Mojang introduces a new mobility option, then it completely negates the others before it, which again, is incorrect. He says that minecarts were ruined by horses and those were ruined by Elytra. No, just no. Let's even bring boats into this equation because that is a form of transportation. Let's say you have this villager or even a mob that you want to bring back to your base. Well, you can't use the Elytra unless you have a lead, I guess, and you definitely can't use horses to do it, so I guess it's either rail or boats. Don't have the resources to make enough rails to transfer this whatever you're transferring thousands or hundreds of blocks away, then a boat it is. Boats can help you transfer mobs from one area to another, or if there's the obvious one, help you cross a big body of water much faster than walking. Also, you can't do it with a horse this way because the horse will drown. Also, if you enjoy building, which I know isn't everyone's forte, you can make an ice boat track and race your friends. Horses offer an easier way for you to land, but you have to be careful because they can die and you can't craft another one. Also, people just like having pets in Minecraft, so a horse will never be a bad addition to the game. Minecart can also be used to transport not only mobs, but different items as well. It can be automated for many different redstone gadgets. So they have much more uses than just trying to move from A to B, but again, that's catered more towards builders. Elytra kind of speak for themselves and are absolutely my favorite thing that they've ever added to this game. So saying that it kind of negates the other ones that came before it is again not really looking at Minecraft the way it's made, but rather through a very narrow lens. I think I'm talking in circles. Now, I don't want to make it sound like he's playing the game incorrectly, because again, you can't play Minecraft wrong. But you're expecting Minecraft to be something that it was never intended to be and wondering why you're disappointed. I think what makes this video even weirder is that it's basically a 30-minute video that he made to advertise a mod that he made. Now you have to pay $8 for. Keep in mind that the vast majority of mods in this game offer way more dynamic gameplay changes and are free of charge. Apparently it's free now due to some backlash he's gotten, but the point still stands. You're kind of presenting yourself like an infomercial, creating a problem that basically nobody has in order to fix this problem for the low price of $8 plus shipping and handling. Minecraft has been praised for years because of its simplicity, but also the infinite possibilities for creation that the player is offered. Exploration is handled in, I think, the best way possible, meaning that if you're a new player to Minecraft and you have literally zero experience, the biome you start in will almost never hinder your ability to find success. Success in this case meaning ores and gear and such like that, because I guess that's what Minecraft is made for. You can play Minecraft however you like, but saying that there's a problem that is so out of touch with the game itself really doesn't sell your solution very well. And I think the people who saw the video kind of agree, because the comments are not very favorable to his point and definitely don't like how he originally charged players for this quote-unquote fix to the issue. But I'm glad you made a mod, because maybe now you'll actually enjoy Minecraft, like the rest of us do. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far, and I'll see you in the next one.
Everybody's jam-packed! Big one! Their battle actually lasted to the double digits. Whack. Fuck is this? Oh, it's literally just a random match. Holy shit, 5 face downs. What the fuck is going on? U-Belt player wins. That's what happens, I guess. Oh god, it just keeps going.
And at the top of the list, we have Chicken Game. This is a field spell card, which has one of 3 effects the turn player is able to use. So it's one of the few effects in the field that both players are allowed to activate once it's on the field. where once per turn you can pay 1,000 life points to choose one of 3 effects, where you can either draw 1 card, destroy this field spell card, or grant your opponent 1,000 life points. And for some reason, this effect is spell speed 4, so your opponent can't respond to it in order to try to negate or destroy the card before you can use the effect. It also has the passive effect on the field, where the player with the lowest life points no longer takes damage. So, why is this card banned? Well, it's that draw 1 effect. Occasionally, there's cards on the ban list with a whole bunch of different effects, and it's only one of their effects that puts them on the ban list, which is definitely the case for Chicken Game. If it didn't have the effect to draw 1 card, it probably wouldn't be banned. Now, here's what's so great about this card. If you activate this card and then use the effect, you get to draw 1 card, which immediately replaces the Chicken Game you just put on the field, which allows you to go hand neutral with card advantage. There is currently a limited card in the game called Upstart Goblin, which also allows you to go hand neutral by drawing 1 card and giving your opponent 1,000 life points. And that card is so good it's currently limited to 1 copy, because it essentially allows you to play a smaller deck, since you can always activate the card and replace it for another one from your deck, which just increases the consistency of basically any deck that it's in. Chicken Game is a little bit better than Upstart Goblin, because it can search out of the deck with a plethora of field spell card support, which allows you to thin your deck even more and then play Chicken Game. There's also another field spell card called Pseudo Space, which allows you to copy the effects of a field spell card in your graveyard for a turn. Oh, and also, Chicken Game only has a soft once per turn for its effect, which means if you get other copies of the card, you can also use their effects on the same turn. So with 3 terraformings and 3 pseudo spaces, you essentially play with 9 less cards in your deck to play Chicken Game, which just added a whole bunch of consistency to any deck that tried to use the engine, as long as they didn't mind paying a whole bunch of life points to do so. There was also an FDK with Chicken Game with all the draw power, where you would just use Life Equalizer and Magical Explosion in order to beat your opponent as soon as their turn started. So, can Chicken Game be unbanned? The answer is maybe. Currently, the card is not banned in the OCG, and only sees a moderate amount of play, if any at all. And part of the reason is because the OCG put restrictions on Terraforming and Metaverse pretty quickly, whereas Chicken Game was banned before either of those cards were restricted on the ban list in the TCG. So without good ways to search the card out, it's not as hyper-consistent as it was in the past. And since the TCG also has Terraforming Limited now, they could probably safely unban the card, if even only to 1 copy. This card is definitely one of the tamest cards on the ban list. Update. All of this is still true, however, now we also have Rainbow Bridge of Salvation as an additional way to search the card, turning foolish burial goods into more copies of Terraform. However, the power of the game has gotten to the point where this kind of investment for a draw 1 isn't that big of a deal, so I wouldn't be surprised if this card was unbanned in TCG someday without a product. And at number 2 on this list, we have Mirage of Nightmare. This is a continuous spell card which has the effect that only activates during your opponent's standby phase, where you draw cards until you have 4 cards in your hand. Then, during your next standby phase, you have to randomly discard the same number of cards in your hand that you drew, or your entire hand if you have less. So essentially, this card would allow you to dump your entire hand during your turn, like what most combo decks do anyway, then draw 4 cards as soon as your opponent's turn started, which could mean getting 4 hand traps, and allowing you to stop your opponent from doing anything. One of the more popular ways to use this card when it was still available to play was to simply destroy the card before your standby phase started. That way, you got to keep the 4 cards in your hand. In the modern game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, drawing 4 cards is kind of ridiculously good. Let me tell you about 3 other cards that exist in the game. Pot of Desires, Pot of Extravagance,
That's it, they're out of ammo, they have no choice.
Pot of Desires requires you to banish 1/4 of your deck face down in order to draw 2 cards. Pot of Extravagance requires you to banish almost half of your extra deck face down in order to draw 2 cards, which also locks you out of other draw effects for the rest of the turn. Hard Card D cannot be special summoned, blocks you from special summoning other monsters, requires the card to tribute itself and only during the turn that it was normal summoned, in which case it immediately ends your turn, and then allows you to draw 2 cards. All 3 of these cards share the common theme of being able to draw 2 cards, and all 3 of them have heavy restrictions for drawing those 2 cards, and all 3 of them have seen competitive play, and consistent competitive play throughout all the years at that. The downsides of Mirage of Nightmare are not even that bad. Even if you don't bypass the effect, you can just refill your hand after dumping everything in your first turn, maybe draw a few hand traps to block your opponent. And there are so many different ways to get rid of Mirage of Nightmare before your turn starts nowadays that if you wanted to go around the side effects, you could do it pretty easily. In fact, you could probably get around the side effects while gaining advantage in some decks. So, can Mirage of Nightmare be unbanned? The answer is definitely no. The card was strong in the early days of the game when you couldn't really bypass the effect very easily, and we kind of straight broke it in the modern
to make her not useless,
where there is a plethora of ways to bypass the side effects, or not even care, since the side effects could be a benefit for some decks. The random discard also counts as a discard effect, so that would activate the effects of Dark Worlds and Dangers. How can the card be fixed to be unbanned? The only way would be to errata the card, and the best way to do that would probably be to put some Sandgan-like restrictions on the cards drawn, where you can't use them during the turn if they're added to your hand. And then take a page from some of the pendulum effects, where the downsides still happen even if the card leaves the field. And of course, banish the cards face down instead of sending them to the graveyard. This would keep the effect of being able to draw 4 cards, but actually give it harsh restrictions, where you would probably still see competitive play. Update. This card is still bonkers. They released even more graveyard effects and cards that like to be discarded since I made the video originally 3 years ago. It seems as if this card gets stronger and stronger as time goes on, especially since it lets you potentially draw into hand traps on your opponent's turn. Next up, we have Card of Safe Return. This card is another continuous spell, which has a very simple effect that if a monster is special summoned from your graveyard, you can draw 1 card. There are quite a few decks that can special summon from the graveyard very easily, and even a couple that do it infinitely through some loops. So that card can essentially allow you to draw every single card in your deck in 1 turn, or just gain a ridiculous amount of advantage for combo decks. And funny enough, this card didn't actually see play when it first came out, and it was an even weaker version than its anime counterpart, which allowed you to draw 3 cards when a monster was summoned. Although, like I explained in the Chicken Game segment, being able to draw 1 card is already pretty good. Not having a limit on it is broken. So, can Card of Safe Return be unbanned? The answer is also definitely no. The card is more broken than Mirage of Nightmare, as it allows you to gain the advantage immediately during your turn without having to wait for your opponent's turn. It would just add a level of consistency to combo decks that would be way too strong for me. How can the card be fixed to be unbanned? This one's pretty easy, just slap a hard once per turn on the effect. You already have cards like Supply Squad that allow you to draw 1 card per turn if a monster you control is destroyed. The activation requirement for that one is not even that much harder than Card of Safe Return, and it doesn't really see that much play. And at number 4 on this list, we have Graceful Charity. This card allows you to draw 3 cards, then discard 2. Unlike Card of Safe Return, this card basically saw play from the beginning, and it didn't really stop seeing play until it got banned, where it was then unbanned for 1 format and then banned again forever in 2007. Out of all the cards that allow you to draw, just in general, Graceful Charity is probably the single strongest without setup, and it technically doesn't give you card advantage, as you just go hand neutral with its effect, similar to Upstart Goblin. The thing with Graceful Charity is it allows you to dig through your deck to get your combo pieces, and then selectively set up your graveyard with any 2 cards from your hand while not losing any advantage in that exchange. It's also a discard effect, so it activates the effect of Dark World monsters and other cards that require specifically to be discarded. And with how prevalent graveyard effects are in the game, with a lot of decks using their graveyard as a second hand, this would just allow you to basically go +3 with its card advantage, instead of the hand neutral like it's intended. And an effortless +3 for a majority of decks is pretty good, especially since people jump through hoops to play cards like Pot of Extravagance, which is only a +1. Can Graceful Charity be unbanned? This is another hard no. It would probably be an auto-include in just about every deck, and allow already good meta decks to be even better without effort. At least there's some counterplay involved with the previous 3 cards, and even a little bit of setup required in order to use them to their broken effects. But not with Graceful Charity. It's just good right out the gate, and is even better in good decks. So, how could the card be fixed to be unbanned? This one's pretty difficult. I can't think of a good way to adjust this card while keeping true to the intended effect, other than just adding a whole bunch of restrictions to it, like the Pot of Greed retrains. Although I don't think that's a very creative way of fixing the effect. But it's just so inherently good that it's kind of hard to allow it to exist without slapping a whole bunch of restrictions onto this imagined errata. Next up on this list, we have Pot of Greed. This card was banned because no one could figure out what it actually does, and was voted as the #1 most confusing card in the game in the 2008 World Championship. But in order to summarize this card's effect, basically it lets you draw 2 cards without any restrictions. Pot of Desires and Pot of Extravagance are basically 2 ways of Konami trying to fix this card, by just creating more balanced versions of it, where they basically did what I suggested for fixing Graceful Charity, just slap a whole bunch of restrictions on it. And also hard once per turns, because the ability to draw 2 cards without any restrictions is literally good in every single deck. Remember, there's a card that's currently limited to 1 copy on the ban list called Second's Light, which allows you to draw 2 cards, but only if you have no spell or traps in your graveyard, and also locks you out of using any other spell or traps for the rest of the duel. And also is a hard once per turn. In addition, it has a really good graveyard effect to Mulligan, but the fact that a card that literally stops you from using any other spell or traps is considered so good that it's currently limited to 1 copy should tell you something about an unrestricted version of Pot of Greed. So, can Pot of Greed be unbanned? Not at all. There's already too many cards in the game that exist which try to fix its effect, which also see heavy competitive play. So, releasing the granddaddy of them all wouldn't really make sense unless they did it for fun, because they wanted everyone to enjoy 1 copy of Pot of Greed in their deck for a format of something. How could the card be fixed to be unbanned? Honestly, I don't think they would, because Pot of Greed has so many retrains. And generally, retrains are Konami's way of trying to fix previously broken cards without having to change the original. I can't think of any card that has had more retrains than Pot of Greed, so I think it's just kind of stuck in ban list purgatory forever. Update. They had no ban list tournaments in Japan where people weren't really using Pot of Greed at all, because that saw the deck was better spent on a hand trap to stop their opponents in, say, turn 1 combos. Which means, in a future where combo decks are so fast, Pot of Greed might be unbannable because its advantage is just too slow to wait to use during your turn. But as it is now, it's still very good to be honest, and its lesser de-evolution versions see immense amount of competitive play still. And for the 6th card on this list, we have the Delinquent Duo. This card has the simple effect where you can pay 1,000 life points to discard 2 cards from your opponent's hand, one of them at random, and the other one of their choice. Technically, this card allows you to go +1 in card advantage, similar to Pot of Greed, although it does require you to pay 1,000 life points, and that +1 alone would probably get the card banned, but that's only half of the problem of this card. If there was a card in the game that only traded 1 for 1 instead of 2 for 1, and only let you go hand neutral, that would be an excellent trade-off. Out of all the ways to go 1 for 1, doing it effortlessly by discarding from your opponent's hand is one of the strongest 1 for 1 trades you can make in the game, because of the potential to loot those effects in order to get rid of your opponent's entire hand before they have a chance to play the game. That's why there's so many heavy restrictions and limitations to cards that allow you to discard from your opponent's hand, where they usually require you to go -1 in those exchanges at the very least, because that does a much better job of balancing it out. And so Delinquent Duo allowing you to go +1 is one of the best ways you could possibly exchange card advantage, which means it's incredibly strong, and was part of one of the very first meta decks in the game, which did not rely on just summoning a strong monster to beat down your opponent. This version actually relied more on just getting rid of your opponent's cards in their hand, while also having a few strong monsters actually deal damage to their opponent, and getting rid of more cards from the hand with cards like Dawn's Luke. So, can Delinquent Duo be unbanned? No, of course not. It's ridiculously powerful. Not even for fun like they could with Pot of Greed, since that card just adds more consistency to decks. Delinquent Duo would be kind of unfair to whoever went second. How can they fix the card to be unbanned? Even if you added on a cost to also discard from your hand in order to use it, it would still be strong. This one's also kind of tough like Graceful Charity, because the effect itself is inherently strong even if you only use it once per turn. Although I would definitely slap a hard once per turn on it anyway, although I can't think of good ways to really restrict this card without just slapping a bunch of restrictions to it, like after they use it, no special summons, or not using any other spell or trap for the rest of the turn, etc, etc. Update. There's actually a lot of discussion in the community about whether a random discard 2 is even useful anymore, since it's only useful going first. And since you don't get to pick the cards, you don't gain any hand knowledge to play around hand traps. Although personally, I'd argue that while some meta decks could probably play the 2 random cards you discarded, it would still be killer to meta decks that actually need to use cards in their hand and not from the graveyard, and this is still a complete blowout to rogue decks. Plus, it's not useless going second either, like most people will argue. People still have hand traps in their hand even after an establishment board of monsters most of the time. Next up on this list, we have the Forceful Sentry. This card has the effect where it simply lets you look at your opponent's hand and then send any one card from your opponent's hand back into their deck. And this card is probably stronger than Delinquent Duo, surprising enough, considering it actually gets rid of one less card. The difference between these two cards is that the Forceful Sentry lets you pick whichever card you want to send back from your opponent's hand, which gives you knowledge on your opponent's hand and allows you to play around whatever they might have left, while also getting rid of whatever their best combo piece is or whatever their most dangerous hand trap is that might stop you from doing your plays. There exists a card in the game called 3 Tactical Talents, which can only be used during your turn when your opponent activates a monster effect during your turn. So it's kind of hard to activate. And what it does is when you use it, it lets you choose one of 3 effects. And the effect chosen the most out of those 3 is basically the one that lets you use Forceful Sentry's effect. The other 2 effects are also good. One of them is literally just Pot of Greed, and the other one is Change of Heart. Both of those are excellent effects to pick as well. It's just the Forceful Sentry is picked the most because it allows you to get rid of your opponent's other hand trap and gain information on what their plan is so that you can play around them and know which hand trap to use yourself. And just all kinds of information that's super valuable in competitive decks. And since it sends the card back to the deck, you don't have to worry about setting up their graveyard like you would if you discarded it like with Delinquent Duo. It's still super valuable to trade 1 for 1 from your opponent's hand, but the Forceful Sentry does it in probably the best possible way. It's straight up a 1 for 1 exchange, you don't gain card advantage, but it's so strong that the effect is literally chosen over 2 other very strong effects that do give you card advantage. So, could the Forceful Sentry be unbanned? This is another hard no, considering the card is probably better than Delinquent Duo. The ability to gain information on your opponent's hand and also control that hand at the same time while not losing any advantage is ridiculously good. Out of all the cards in the game that technically only trade 1 for 1, Forceful Sentry is probably the best. How could the card be fixed to be unbanned? Honestly, they kind of already did it with 3 Tactical Talents, just put crazy restrictions on the effect, and even then, it's still really strong. This is another one where a hard once per turn wouldn't really solve the issue, since there exists a hard once per turn version of this card in the game that does already see competitive success. And it's also kind of like Pot of Greed, where they already kind of have a retrain of the card, so they wouldn't really need to bother with fixing the card in order to unban it. And at number 8 in this video, we have Confiscation. This card is like the Forceful Sentry. It lets you look at your opponent's hand, but it discards the card you pick instead of sending it back to the deck, and requires you to pay 1,000 life points to use it. And even though it's technically not as good as Forceful Sentry, and was the last of the 3 discard cards to be banned, it's also still incredibly powerful and would absolutely see play in pretty much every meta deck if it was live. So could Confiscation be unbanned? Same as Forceful Sentry? Probably not. They've already introduced an incredibly nerfed version of this card as well, called a Pointer of the Red Lotus, which only gets rid of a card for 1 turn, is a trap card which is inherently slower than a spell card, and requires you to pay 2 times the amount of life points, and it sees all kind of competitive success. So obviously the better version would be too powerful for the current metagame. Maybe we'll get to a point where graveyard effects are just better than hand effects, to the point where getting your hand discarded isn't a big deal anymore, in which case it might come off the ban list. How could the card be fixed to be unbanned? Well, they already kind of fixed it with the Pointer of the Red Lotus. Slow it down by making it a trap, making them only lose the card temporarily, and of course requiring a harsher life point cost. Update: a Pointer of the Red Lotus is now limited to 1 copy because it was too good, further cementing how good Confiscation would still be in today's meta. Next up in this video, we have Snatch Steal. This is an equipped spell card which has the effect to take control of whichever monster your opponent controls that you equip it to, with the downside that during each of your opponent's standby phases, they gain 1,000 life points. Now, giving your opponent life points isn't really a downside most of the time. It's almost laughably bad as a detriment to a card, since life points don't really matter very much, and is such a minor amount to give to your opponent for how powerful the effect is. Inherently, the ability to take control of one of your opponent's monsters is a +1 in card advantage, since you're simultaneously denying your opponent a card and gaining a new card at the same time. And Snatch Steal doesn't really require you to lose any kind of advantage to accomplish this feat. There's also no limitations on the monster you can steal, which makes it additionally a very powerful form of removal, since it technically doesn't destroy or banish. It's able to steal a lot of monsters that usually would have protection. Although since the card does target, it needs to be equipped. There is some counterplay where they could just chain MST to the activation of Snatch Steal in order to stop it. Or if a card has an effect that prevents targeting, like Fantastical Dragon Phantasmate, you'll be able to stop it with those cards. However, also, because it's an equipped spell card, it enjoys a massive amount of very good support. The card could be searched out from the deck directly with Armory Call or Hidden Armory, and it could be recycled endlessly with Gear Breed. Equipped spell cards enjoy a lot of really good support, because they are inherently kind of bad, and they can receive this good support because cards like Snatch Steal are banned, so they don't have to worry too much about it. So, could Snatch Steal be unbanned? Funny thing is, they did unban it for a single format. Konami was trying this thing where they were unbanning choice cards for one format, just to allow players to play some of these long-standing banned cards. And Snatch Steal was one of those very few cards that was unbanned in this process before they abandoned the idea. And in that one format, literally every single deck played the card, and it was absolutely meta-defining and could single-handedly win you some games. It was almost hilarious how good it was, even in a time when Dragon Rulers were still running about. There's even better equipped spell card support today, to the point where cards like Smoke Grenade of the Thief is considered a broken card, where in the past it was considered a joke. So I think the card would probably perform even better today. How could the card be fixed to be unbanned? The thing is, there already are some equipped spell cards that allow you to steal your opponent's monsters, and they're not considered broken. Most of them rely on another card being on the field as well, like Comic Hand or Falling Down. Those ones have additional counterplay since your opponent can remove the other cards in the field, which render their effects no longer working. Snatch Steal isn't really part of an archetype though, so that kind of fix wouldn't really work with it. If they wanted to unban Snatch Steal, they would probably have to give it an actual cost to its negative effect, like requiring the person who uses it to pay half your life points during each standby phase, and also ban Hidden Armory, Armory Call, and Gear Breed. Although even if you ban those three cards, Infernobles would probably still be able to use it pretty easily, and you can't really ban an entire archetype. Well, they can. They did do that with the Dragon Rulers, but they probably don't want to do that again just to unban one singular equipped spell card. All that being said, I'm not 100% confident that they wouldn't just unban the card without a change, because it would just be a strong staple like Super Polymerization. And there's so many strong staples in the game right now that it would just kind of fit in with the rest of them if it was simply given an actual cost or downside, since it's currently an effortless +1. And last up on this first episode of all of the banned spell cards, we have Change of Heart. This is another spell card which allows you to take control of a monster that is banned, and is definitely the premier strongest of all of them. It allows you to take control of any monster without restrictions, just like Snatch Steal, although it doesn't have counterplay potential of them being able to chain an MST to stop the effect.
Alright,
So it's
I
strictly
never
a stronger
summoned
effect.
Megalith style like
Just like Snatch Steal, it allows you to go +1 with its ability to control one of your opponent's monsters. And it's a very powerful
I needed
form
to
of
target
removal that has
Bathor.
very few counters. Basically, anything that can remove a monster without destroying it, banishing it, or targeting is pretty good. Change of Heart does target at the very least, so there are some cards which can be immune to the effect. And
Pretty
Change
sure
of Heart is
the Four
an
Link
original
guy
card
is
that
gonna
allows
come
you to
back.
steal one of your opponent's monsters. And it has such a simple effect
Portal's
that
probably
it's
gonna be
super
destroyed
powerful,
too.
where it would definitely see all kinds of play, considering Mind Control is an extremely limited version of Change of Heart and sees a healthy amount of competitive success, even though it has a whole bunch of limitations on the card you can steal for a turn. So, could Change of Heart be unbanned? Probably. Like I said with Snatch Steal, it would just be a very powerful staple that would kind of fit in with a whole bunch of other powerful staples. The card wouldn't have that much benefit over a card like Mind Control, since it would basically just be taking the card for one turn and using the stolen card in the exact same ways people use Mind Control today. Except for the fact that you could also attack with the monster or tribute it. If it were to be released, it would have to be to one copy, just like Mind Control, but even then I could definitely still see it being a little bit too strong, because generally they don't like effortless +1s in the game. And this is definitely an effortless +1 since it currently doesn't have any restrictions to it. How could the card be fixed to be unbanned? Honestly, they kind of already did this with Brain Control. It was another Mind Control-like card that was also banned, and it was only a slightly more restrictive Change of Heart, since it simply required you to pay life points in order to steal a monster. And all they did to Brain Control was give it a simple errata, where they gave it an actual restriction to the targets it could take control of, where you can only take control of a monster that can be normal summoned or sent, which means you can't use it to steal extra deck monsters. If they simply gave Change of Heart the same restriction, then they could easily take it off the ban list and no one would play it. If they required you to discard one card in order to use it, it would no longer be a +1 and still be a form of removal, but one which is kind of dubious if it would see play or not. This one seems like it'd be pretty easy to fix, since they already had success in the past with similar cards in the form of Brain Control. Although they overcorrected with that card, now it doesn't see any play. Update: this card is now limited in the TCG and semi-limited in Master Duel. And while it does see some competitive play, it's not the powerhouse card to be afraid of, and it's not even omnipresent in every deck. First up on this list, we have the Counter to Dragon Ruler's Spellbook of Judgment. If you watched my video on why main deck monsters are banned part 1, you'd see that half the Dragon Ruler archetype is currently banned, and that's because they were incredibly powerful and one of the strongest archetypes in the game's history. And even with all the advantages Dragon Rulers had, they never make Tier 0 status because of Spellbook of Judgment coming out at the same time. A single card that's able to hold back an entire powerful archetype is an excellent card to start off a video on singular powerful cards. So what does Spellbook of Judgment do? Well, during the end phase of the turn this card is activated, you get to add Spellbook spell cards from your deck to your hand, up to the number of spell cards you activated this turn, after using Spellbook of Judgment. So, you'd want to use Spellbook of Judgment immediately, then start using as many spell cards as possible, which do not need to be Spellbook spell cards, as any spell card counted towards its effect. Then you can special summon any one spellcaster type monster from your deck, who had a level less than or equal to the number of spell cards added to your hand by its effect. And also, this card had a hard once per turn. So, if you played this card correctly, it would allow you to go +7 in card advantage during your end phase. And generally, a card is considered incredibly good if it allows you to go +1. So, this is a little bit stronger than that by a smidge. Although, gaining a whole bunch of advantage doesn't mean anything if you can't use those cards, as technically Oja Magic allows you to go +2 with its effect, and that one doesn't see any play because the cards that it lets you add to your hand aren't good. Well, spellbooks actually have 2 pretty good targets. One of them is their field spell card, the Grand Spellbook Tower. This card allows you to draw 1 extra card every turn as long as you return 1 Spellbook spell card from your graveyard to your deck. And it floats into the special summon of a spellcaster type monster from your deck on its destruction. With the Grand Spellbook Tower, you essentially got to draw 2 cards every turn, once during your draw phase and another during your standby phase, which is pretty good for a field spell card. Although it's pretty easy to search out field spell cards, that's not really the power card of spellbooks. It was definitely Spellbook of Fate. This is a quick play spell card that allows you to banish a number of Spellbook spell cards from your graveyard in order to activate one of its 3 effects. If you banish 3 for its best effect, you got to banish 1 card in the field without targeting it. And non-target banishing is incredibly good. But it also had the option to have a Book of Wind effect that could double as flip a monster face up as well. Or if you only banished 1 spell card, you could return one of your opponent's set spell or traps to their hand, which wasn't as useful. Spellbook of Fate was definitely the power card for being able to non-target banish one of your opponent's cards. Then there was a whole bunch of other mediocre Spellbook spell cards, which aren't super good on their own, but if you're able to use them without worrying about losing advantage, then they actually get kind of bumped up in usefulness a little bit. Spellbook of Wisdom allowed to protect your spellcasters from spell and trap effects. Spellbook of Secrets was a great card to copy the effect of, in order to search out your other spellbooks thanks to cards like Spellbook of the Master. And there was even a spellbook card that allows you to special summon spellcasters from the graveyard, Spellbook of Life. Although, while the spellbook cards were fine and everything, the real power of Spellbook of Judgment was the ability to special summon that monster from your deck. The absolute best target to choose was Joundin Spiritualist. This is a level 3 spellcaster type monster which prevents both players from special summoning monsters when on the field, and allows you to destroy all special summon monsters in the field if you use this effect to discard a card from your hand. And preventing your opponent from special summoning is super good. Most decks are trying to special summon as much as possible in order to do the thing. So, they have to try to destroy Joundin before they can do any of their combos, where you can then just control them with your set Spellbook spell cards, i.e. Spellbook of Fate. So, with Spellbook of Judgment, which was incredibly easy to search out in that deck I might add, thanks to cards like Spellbook of Secrets and Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, you were basically incentivized to play all the cards in your hand without needing to conserve anything, because you would just get it all back anyway, and then some. The amount of advantage the one card generated was just too strong, which is why the card was banned shortly after it came out in September of 2013. Can Spellbook of Judgment be unbanned 7 years after it came out? Probably still no. While it is true most of the Spellbook cards have been power prepped already, there is a variant of Spellbooks that does see some niche competitive success even today, making use of a more control-oriented strategy with cards like Mystic Mind combined with Joundin the Spiritualist. They also released a new spellbook spell card called Spellbook of Knowledge, which adds a little bit more consistency to the spellbook engines, or just any deck that uses spellcaster type monsters. And there's a lot of good spellcaster type monsters in the game. The fact is, Spellbook of Judgment just allows you to gain too much advantage on its own, and even though most of the cards it can search out aren't as powerful anymore, it doesn't really matter. Summon Sorceress, the best banned waifu on this list, which shows Konami doesn't understand how broken special summoning a key card from your deck can be on a generic Link 3 monster.
The fuck?
And that concludes the top 10 waifus. Did you know, fun fact, 97% of my audience is male, which is why I chose Akiza as this channel's mascot, because I knew who my audience was, and I thought that might get more subscribers early on. I also created a legitimate top 10 waifu video as the first ever top 10 on this channel, for similar reasons to choosing the mascot. I thought it would get more easy views. It didn't really work out that way, and I think I might have that video hidden on the channel. Or maybe it's still there, I don't know. I rarely delete my old videos. Now, this video was obviously a joke. Let me go back to my fake YouTuber voice for a second, since I'm sure you guys don't enjoy my real voice. It's very monotone and listless. Because this is my most requested top 10 topic out of anything. And I kind of have an internal list of topics that I won't cover for various reasons. And on that list, I'll show it on screen to show how short it is. And most of them are very general things, like don't cover ideas that have been done well by other YouTubers, don't do artwork, decks, etc, etc. And the only one that has a specific video topic listed is the waifu list. And the reason for that is because I kind of already did it, and because it's kind of a cringy
Fuck
idea.
it, let's put in ruin.
You see, if you make the video seriously, that would just be judging the aesthetics of big-breasted anime women, which, sure, certainly has its own appeal. That's not really the kind of videos I make. The only way to do it would be just to talk about female cards, which happen to be good, but that seems like kind of a lame idea. And I'm all for niche video topics that compare how good certain cards are, based on really niche things, like the one I did on the top 10 cards that require you to pay 1,000 life points to activate their effects. It's a very niche topic. It would be kind of the same way I would do the waifu video. And I just don't think that's a fun idea.
The best thing about voiceless
cards together
voice
on mechanics or
is that dueling with it is fast, whether it's a win or lose.
And not their artwork, which kind of leads into one of my other
At Gold, we see a lot more hand traps being played, so Megalith is slowly but surely becoming fucking
I sometimes get requests to talk about certain card
Wow, I have all of the hand starters. That's wonderful.
Subjective. And I have done a video like that in the past. I have a video on the channel called Top 10 Cool Poses or
Check out this Ritual Sanctuary.
Which is entirely a list created.
Alright, now check out this. Preparation of Rites.
I didn't really like making
There's an Ash Blossom. Who would have seen that coming?
But it wasn't very fun to actually put that idea into practice. Now, I know I put out a lot of top 10 videos on weird topics, but that's because I like to do those things. If anyone has watched my channel from before 2018, when I started doing nothing but top 10s, you know I did nothing but gimmick decks for 5 years. I like Yu-Gi-Oh! For really weird and gimmicky reasons. I don't actually care about playing competitively in the slightest. I also haven't played in person since 2013. Everything I do in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is online, even though I have the means and funds to play any card I want, or any deck I want. I just don't care. I do care very strongly about making a video on the top 10 monsters who have 0 attack and defense, though. That's a fine idea to me. It's a gripping topic based on the card's stats and effects, and not their artwork. And I also think these kinds of videos perform better, too. A certain appeal of top 10 videos comes in whether or not you can guess spots on the list. I think that's one of the psychological factors that makes top 10 so appealing, is people like to guess what's going to be there. And they like to see those guesses appear in the video. And they also like to be surprised by certain things that outperform their guesses, or just learn new and interesting facts. That's why I talk about the history of the game a lot, because Yu-Gi-Oh's history is not well documented. You can't just look up the Yu-Gi-Oh history online somewhere. You kind of have to pick out pieces of it here and there for yourself. And you can't really guess what will be in an aesthetics video. You have to know the person making the videos pretty well, if you want to be able to guess which cards would appear in that kind of list. And I don't know if you know this or not, but only 30% of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed to the channel. And of the 30% who watch my videos regularly, I'd say only 10% of them at most know about my personal preferences enough, or care enough, to hear about my opinions on things. So, creating a video for 3% of my audience is not very smart, especially when I have to pay editors to create these videos for me. Now, my editors don't actually play Yu-Gi-Oh! They just do all the busy work of making the videos look good. I have to tell them exactly where every single card in the video appears, and part of their payment is on how well the videos do. So it just doesn't make sense for me to create videos that both won't perform well, and that I don't really care about making. And the waifu video is kind of in a gray area with that. Sure, it's technically an aesthetics video, but it's also a funny idea that would definitely get clicks, because my audience is 97%
I don't think it's a good idea to cancel
which
the
is why
summon of
this
that.
video kind of exists as a joke. To say that I've already done it, and so I don't have to subject my editors to putting together a cringy idea.
So I know I can just I can negate the fusion summons instead.
Another big no-no is top 10 decks and or engines. You see, I have broken this rule a few times, as I have a video on this channel called the top 5 tier 0 decks, but those will always be the exception to the rule. You see, there is so much misunderstanding in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community about the tier system that's used, and people will arbitrarily assign tiers to their decks, and there's lots of misinformation about which deck used to be tier 0 out there. When I originally researched the topic, I watched a whole bunch of other videos on it, and there was almost no research done in any of those other similar videos. And they were very obviously just talking based on memories, or hearsay online. So I actually looked back at records and spent about a week just looking up information, and I came to the conclusion that there were so few tier 0 decks, i.e. decks that require more than 65% representation of top events, and there are just also very few records of early Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament results. So my video on the topic is probably the only one that has actual research put into it, and even though it was only 5 spots on the list, the video was half an hour long, because videos done about decks or engines require you to talk about multiple cards in the video in order to give a big picture. And if you have to talk about the ins and outs and combos of a whole bunch of different cards per spot in order to explain why a deck was good or bad, that just makes the video itself so much longer. So the reason I don't do them is because those videos are just too long, and it would take too much time to make. Alternatively, I could just knock them down to a top 5 list, which is something I could probably do in the future, although I like to keep these videos as top 10s to be more consistent, and top 5s are usually only done if there literally isn't 10 topics to talk about, like in the case of the tier 0 video, or if I'm just too lazy to think of 10 topics. And I might as well finishing about the rest of the topics that I rarely do, which is what I should probably rename this list to myself, because I have done videos on a lot of these topics, to be perfectly honest. Anyways, top 10 anime thing here. People like to ask me to make videos about the anime topics relating to Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and I do have a handful of anime-related topics on the channel, but here's the thing, I don't actually watch the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime.
I can't negate the summon.
I watched the season when I was a child, and I kind of
Chimera
stopped
Rampage,
watching
apparently.
the Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridge series. And that's the only anime I know about to a moderate extent. I never watched GX. Everything I know about that series is from playing all of the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Tag Force games. I never actually watched 5Ds, which is ironic considering the mascot of my channel. And I never watched any of the ones afterwards. I tried to watch some episodes of 5Ds and some episodes of GX, but that was done as an adult, and those are very obviously children's shows. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to watch children's shows. Some of them can be quite enjoyable as adults. Avatar: The Last Airbender, for example. That's a children's show, and it's a very good show at that. Yu-Gi-Oh! Just isn't the kind of show that appeals to me anymore. And I do watch a lot of anime. And my favorite genre of anime is
I'm a fool.
So it's not like I'm an anime snob. I just won't watch it because it has lots of childish plot elements and characters. It's just that kind of thing doesn't appeal to me anymore, and I'm not going to force myself to watch it. So I can't really do anime ideas because I don't watch the anime, and I don't want to watch the anime. However, if they ever announce they're going to make an anime based on the World Legacy series, I'd watch that in a heartbeat. You know, if they actually made good Yu-Gi-Oh! Animes, I would totally be all over that. And finally, I have my top 10 favorite X things. I kind of explained that one earlier, and why I don't make videos about artwork themes. It's because making videos about my personal favorite things kind of goes against the psychology of why people watch top 10s. You see, I actually went to college for psychology before I dropped out to focus on YouTube. And I don't know if psychology is the right word for it, but what I've noticed through my own personal market research, people don't care about your opinions on things unless they already know who you are or like you. And since 70% of my viewers aren't actually subscribed to the channel, that means the majority of my viewers don't know who I am and probably only watch a handful of my videos. Or they only watch my videos that are recommended to them because they think the topics sound interesting.
and a topic about my personal favorite cards, for example, or my most nostalgic cards, won't appeal to the majority of my audience, because they don't care about my opinion. Nor should they. I'm not saying this like it's a bad thing. Having so many new viewers to the channel means you have a healthy, growing channel. If anything, you're probably in trouble if you have more subs watching your videos than newer viewers. So, I'll make my favorite X Things videos occasionally, for fun, but I never intend for them to do well, and they usually never do. It's kind of the same reason I make the custom card review series. It's just kind of a fun thing to do. Although making a custom card review is so much more time-friendly to me than it is to create a full top 10 video that I know won't do well. Especially since I run 2 channels and I have 4 editors to get videos to. I don't really have the time to put a whole bunch of time and effort into a vanity project. Which is why the vanity projects I do are usually ones that can be done efficiently in a timely manner. Like the custom card reviews, or the occasional gimmick deck. And it's also why Rescue Rabbit takes a year for me to make, because that is purely a vanity project, and none of my editors know actually how to make those videos, because it's surprisingly editing intensive. Okay, and I only talked about all of these things to make the video look over 10 minutes, so that I could fool people into thinking this video was legit, if they were basing it on just the watch time, because my normal videos are 10 to like 25 minutes long, and if I just made the joke video, it would be like 3 minutes long total. So instead of having a whole bunch of blank space to fool people, I thought I would just talk about video ideas that I rarely do. Which means I should probably talk about the last one. I try not to do ideas that have been done by other YouTubers well, or that have been done recently. Generally, since Yu-Gi-Oh! Releases so many new cards all the time, the videos I make a year ago could be outdated already, and I could just remake them and it would have half the different spots on the list. So that's not really a concern, and I kind of ignore this rule all the time, to be honest, to the point where I should probably just remove it for myself. Okay, and I hope you enjoyed my video on the top 10 best waifus in Yu-Gi-Oh! If you have a favorite waifu in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I didn't list, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments, as well as future video ideas about more waifu-related videos that I could cover later on.
Nobody ever expects Saphira to show up. Cause she's useless. Oh, they surrendered. I was already planning on playing in solo mode anyway, so this is nice. Also, that's not a nice number. I can get called by the grave now if I want. That's another staple. That's good to have. Oh yeah, Harold. I'm hoping to get a free copy of the 6-star Herald Ritual Monster here. And attack position. The Heralds are defensive. The UI for Master Duel is good, but I think it tries to focus too much on pizzazz. Because like I go to Dueling Nexus and I'm like, holy crap, this is so much more intuitive and quick. Like the menu pop-ups when you're selecting cards, I feel is counterintuitive. There's really no need to do that. Oh hey, Herald of Pure Light! Herald of Green Light. Fucking worthless. I mean, this Xyz monster is also worthless, but wow, 2 cards of consonants. Well, that sucks. That was my only starter. That might just give me something worthwhile. Oh no! Right, they discarded Herald. The Diviner of the Herald. Oh my god. I'm fucking dead. I better draw the nuts here. I'm fucking screwed. Shit. Yeah, that deck can't play through any hand traps. Well, this deck can't either. Alright, they are both returned to the deck. Dang it. Yay, Miraculous Advent is back again. Alright, looks like we don't get any Herald cards. That sucks. Nice. Oh shit. An ultra rare. I mean, I guess that's kinda good. I could theoretically use it.